Hello, and thank you for tuning in to This Week at CFSA. This month, we are focusing on looking at hunger and food access issues. I don't know what word I was trying to say. And this week, we're going to be zooming in on the importance of food hubs, talking about what they are, what are some of the challenges that they face, and maybe how you can get involved. At the end, we're going to be bringing in a colleague that you don't see here. Her name is Chloe Johnson, and she is on our food safety team, and she will be speaking to that. So stay tuned. As you can see here, my colleague Mary Beth Miller I always point the wrong direction. Mary Beth Miller is joining me. And Mary Beth, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thanks, Ashley. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mary Beth Miller. I'm CFSA's education coordinator, and I've also been in charge of coordinating our FarmsSHARE food box program since its inception last May, and continuing to do that through this next round of FarmsSHARE that's happening January through May 2021.
Awesome. Cohort 3 is we're calling it.
Yep.
Well, before we dive straight in, I'd like to just kind of zoom out a little bit and ask you to define what food hubs are for people who might be unfamiliar with the term. And also, I mean, as a farming association, like what's the connection there and why are they good for farmers?
Yeah, so the USDA has a definition of a food hub, which is a centrally located facility with a business management structure facilitating the aggregation, storage, processing, distribution, and or marketing of locally and regionally produced food products. So that's a mouthful, but like these are typically warehouses with cold storage that are located in mostly urban areas such that food is easily just delivered, stored, and then distributed to nearby communities. And I have a graphic, Ashley, if you want to.
Let's add you here.
So that's our USDA definition of a food hub. But they, so food hubs are a common market, and they are typically relationship based. So relationships with farmers and relationships with the community. They benefit farmers because many small scale and mid scale producers often find themselves with not enough time to produce and direct market their locally grown products. So we're familiar with the farms and the farmers that we see at the farmers market, but there are so many more farms out there that are growing and producing food that don't sell at the farmers market. And if the farmers markets are saturated and they're not letting in new farmers, the growers still need a way to sell their food. So food hubs provide another marketing option to producers who do not have time to participate in a farmer's market or other direct marketing venues like a CSA or a farm stand. Finding access to distribution can be very challenging for local small-scale producers, and food hubs can help overcome that challenge because they can aggregate enough food from small farmers to sell into wholesale accounts that often require large quantities of food. So just being able to aggregate, if you think about I know this is really small, but they have hospitals, institutions, schools. Those places need a lot of food at once, but one farmer is not going to be able to provide that. So the food hub can aggregate from all of these different local farmers to then be able to sell into these local institutions. And it benefits everybody.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. I know that it's a really high level view, and this is a graphic that might be a little difficult for y'all to see, but it nonetheless gives you the idea of just how many different places, how many connections are made, and what a conduit food hubs can be. I'm thinking a lot about the pandemic. I mean, we're a year in ish, and how have they adapted to meet the needs of farmers and communities? It's been such a big change.
Yeah, so pre-pandemic, many of the food hubs relied on these larger wholesale accounts like schools and institutions and hospitals. And restaurants. And so when like restaurants and schools closed, they had all of these large accounts that were no longer purchasing from them in bulk quantities. And farmers who relied on these wholesale markets were having a hard time pivoting to direct market sales. So if you're a farmer and you've never had to reach out to individuals to sell your product, or if you're not used to bunching radishes in a way that you can sell to a retail customer, it was a real struggle. So we saw, but at the same time, the demand for food assistance and home delivery increased drastically. So we saw many of these food hubs that were set up for delivering in bulk start packing smaller CSA style food boxes for individual families. Many of the food hubs were already doing home delivery, and so they already had the infrastructure and the staff capacity and the distribution capabilities to pivot pretty easily to start doing more food assistance. But there was a bit of a learning curve with some of these other food hubs. But because they already had those relationships, they were, it was very easy for them to sort of step into that food assistance role and continue to help farmers and get food to the people who needed it.
Absolutely. I mean, I would imagine these food hubs are managing at all different capacities. And like you said, some of them are set up to do these things and others aren't, particularly in, packaging these individual food boxes like a CSA share. And I'm wondering if you can think of any particular examples. And also some are popping up in specific response to the pandemic. But I'm just wondering, can you kind of exemplify this with a specific food hub?
Yeah, so some food hubs were already set up for individual food boxes, and others were more sort of institution focused, and they made this pivot. And then what we saw was a lot of these other community-based food hubs popping up specifically in response to COVID. And one of them in particular is one that we worked with in our second cohort for FarmsSHARE, and that we're currently working with in this third cohort, which is Tallgrass Food Box. They're based out of the Triangle, and they're an example of a food hub that emerged in response to COVID. So it was started by three entrepreneurs, Gabrielle E.W. Carter, Derek Beasley, and Gerald Harris, and they purchased exclusively from Black farmers in the surrounding counties. And every 2 weeks, the farmers deliver produce to the warehouse they use. And it's based out of Bull City Cider Works in Durham. And the three of them pack the boxes, and then the food is distributed to communities in need. So they will work with, individuals to come and deliver those boxes to families, or other folks will like pick up that food and make prepared meals, and that'll go to families. So it's just this very beautiful example of deep community care that is needed to reach these individual families that need it. And I have had the pleasure of visiting, because they are the closest food hub to me, of visiting Tallgrass Food Box. So these are the food hubs that we're currently working with in this this cohort of FarmsSHARE.
And Mary Beth, can we pause just for a minute? Chase had a great question of asking if that first graphic, or maybe any of these graphics, but particularly the one about the distribution cycle, or like all those arms, will be made available.
We can definitely do that. I grabbed it from the internet and put it in PowerPoint, and we can definitely, Ashley, I can work with you on making that available. Thank you, Chase. So this is just to show the food hubs that we're currently working with. These are not all the food hubs that we worked with FarmsSHARE. Last summer, we also worked with the Produce Box and Catawba Fresh down in South Carolina. We worked with Grocers on Wheels. We worked with Farmer Food Share. And then one food hub that is not mentioned in here, but is working with a lot of these, is Firsthand Foods, that is an aggregator of local meats. This is just a photo of the operation at Tallgrass Food Box. So every 2 weeks, farmers will deliver their produce to this food hub, and Full City Cider Works has been very generous with letting them use this space. And then they will pack the boxes. This is just an example of some of the local fresh produce that is in the boxes. Collards and onions and kale and lettuce and local eggs, sweet potatoes and squash.
So beautiful.
And then the boxes are loaded into, sometimes, depending on who they're coordinating with, people will come pick them up and deliver them to individual families. So it really is this, it's depends on the community, and it really is a community organization that gets the food to individual families, because a lot of these families don't have transportation, so they can't drive to go pick up food somewhere. And then I was able to help deliver some of these boxes to a local hotel, where the boxes are going to some employees there. So yeah, that's just kind of how the day goes in getting those boxes, and it's really neat because these the food that the food box recipients are eating are coming from people in their own community, and that just makes a big difference. The name of who's raising the eggs, the farmer's name is on that egg carton, so they know who is giving them that food, and that's a really unique aspect of food assistance, and just the importance that food hubs play.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for preparing these graphics, and we're getting a lot of thank yous for being able to share that initial graphic after this. So y'all are welcome. We'll make that happen. And I'm just thinking so much about that. If you're just tuning in, we are talking about the importance of food hubs. We were just highlighting the conversation with a discussion through our FarmsSHARE program. And Mary Beth is the current coordinator of that program and CFSA's education coordinator. And yeah, we were talking about the Tallgrass Food Box, who are awesome. Kind of in that line, I mean, FarmsSHARE, that kicked off last May. So it's been almost a year, but I guess more so like 10 months. And I'm wondering, Mary Beth, like, what do you see as food hubs? Like, what's their role in food assistance outside of a pandemic?
Yeah, I personally, like, the realization that I've come to is that they must be an integral part of food assistance going forward, especially food hubs that serve more rural counties and places that are less likely to have grocery stores, local food co-ops, farmers markets, even food banks that can provide fresh produce.
Mm-hmm.
And some of these food hubs are the only way that people are getting a steady supply of fresh fruits and vegetables, because they get the produce from the food hubs get the produce from the farms, package it, and they can deliver it to an endpoint, whether that's a church that people attend, or a housing authority, or even a central food bank. So it is really important that we consider how the role that food hubs play in the local food system. And through the pandemic, we've seen how they have, really kept that farmer to consumer relationship intact. So that's my hope, is that we'll continue to put our resources into helping food hubs, be this very integral piece of the food assistance puzzle going forward.
Yeah. I mean, I guess this kind of zooms in on that question and answer a little bit more of, are there specific things that food hubs need, or to better operate, or to better assist farmers in particular, or their communities? Like, because the fresh piece of it is really complicated.
Yeah. Food hubs, they need appropriate infrastructure, like cold storage, and staff capacity. It takes a lot of time to package those individual boxes, and also delivery capabilities. So just, driving from the food hub out to these drop-off points, whether that's an individual household or a food bank, or another community organization where people are picking up that food, and all of that takes capital. But it is a sort of chicken and egg, where you need the farmers to be able to sell into the food hubs, but you need that infrastructure to be able to take all of that food. And so there does need to be serious investment and programs that can support these efforts in the long term. So there does need to be this upfront, flow of cash into food hubs, so that they can get set up to take on more produce and to be able to distribute it out to communities in need. So, for instance, like last October, there was a certain amount of state money from North Carolina appropriated to food hubs for COVID relief. And that certainly needs to be part of the next round of state funding for a COVID relief package. And I think it definitely needs to persist beyond just emergency food relief funding. Mm-hmm. But if that opportunity presents itself, you betcha we will, have a call to action about how to support food hubs and hopefully seek some more funding.
Absolutely. I just want to highlight I keep pointing the whatever direction I'm pointing in. One of our food hub partners in the FarmsSHARE project, Davon Goodwin, is saying, thank you for all the work y'all have done with the FarmsSHARE. Our community is grateful for this program. Just wanted to relate that. Thanks for tuning in, Davon. We love working with you. As we wind down here, I have one more question for you, Mary Beth, and then I'd love to flip it to Chloe so she can talk about kind of an action-oriented piece that could help local food businesses right now. Is something you can do today, tomorrow, or anytime before February 22nd. So my last question to you, Mary Beth, is I'm thinking a lot about how most of us might not realize it, but if you're intentionally purchasing local goods, local food, then there's a good chance a food hub has had a part of putting it on our table. I'm just hoping you can give an example of how an everyday consumer might benefit from a food hub and not realize it.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different versions of food hubs. But for instance, if you subscribe to a home delivery service, such as Fresh List or the Produce Box or Bella Bean or Mother Earth Food, those are regional aggregates that buy from North Carolina farmers or, local farmers, and then deliver to your home. At the grocery store, for instance, if you purchase meat from Firsthand Foods, or if you purchase produce from Happy Dirt, those are food aggregators that work with farmers across the state. And, they're able to get those wholesale accounts that individual farmers might otherwise not be able to. Even some of your favorite local restaurants, they purchase from food hubs to procure local produce and meats. Again, because, sometimes restaurants need a whole lot of food for the week, that it's much easier for food hubs to be able to supply instead of the restaurants having to coordinate with a bunch of other local farms. So food hubs have this role in the local food system that's not only with food assistance, and it's not only with feeding, institutions and schools and hospitals, but, everyday consumers, probably, again, like you said, if you're intentional about buying local food, have purchased food that has gone through a food hub.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I know even just my mom gets excited when she's in Whole Foods and like picks up the collards and it says Happy Dirt because she knows that's from an aggregator here. So you really might not realize it, but they are everywhere. Well, all of that said, Mary Beth, I'm going to invite Chloe into the conversation to talk about the action piece that you all can play a part in. So Chloe, I'm going to add you on in here. Hello.
Hello, good morning, everyone.
Well, there's a lot that we could say about what's currently going on, but do you mind just giving people kind of a high-level view of this food traceability thing and how they can pitch in if they feel called to?
Sure, of course. So there is a new proposed rule around traceability requirements. And I am here to give you a homework assignment for the weekend because, as Ashley said earlier, comments are due the 22nd, which, if you don't know, is Monday. So we have created a handy-dandy template that I think Ashley is going to post the link to. That will, go into more detail than I'm going to go into here about the new rules and regulations, but also it gives you a really great outline of how to insert your personal information, but also just walks you through how to think about the regulations and what we are looking at as the problems with this new proposed regulation. So some of you may not even know what traceability is. That is the process that someone would use, anyone in the food system, to track food through the food system, usually done with a lot number. Or maybe a UPC code. So that's how you've probably come across it in a grocery store. And back in 2011, this food safety law was passed. It's called the Food Safety Modernization Act. And it's really a lot of what it asks for are kind of industrial scale food safety regulations. And there are exemptions in that law for small farms. But when that law was passed, the Congress asked the FDA to make some record keeping rules to help us track food throughout the food system, which is important when there are food safety outbreaks, like foodborne illness outbreaks. But the problem is that the rule has overreached and it's over-inclusive. The Congress originally asked for these rules to cover facilities and high-risk food. But the proposed rule as written covers more than facilities. It extends these rules to farms and then puts a list of fresh produce as high-risk food. So those are the first two things that we think weren't the best decisions. And I'm going to read the list of these high-risk fresh produce. There's more food on what's called the food traceability list, but what we're looking at is the fresh produce on that list, and that would be cucumber, herbs, leafy greens, so a large group of produce there, melons, peppers, sprouts, tomatoes, or tropical tree fruits. So those are the things that the FDA has proposed to include on this high-risk food traceability list. That essentially the problem, the outcome of these rules would be farms and small food hubs would have more record keeping requirements, which means more paperwork, more time, more training of employees, and potentially having to purchase new technologies to keep up with what the record keeping requirements are asking for. One important piece is they say that you can keep these records electronically or paper, but that if the FDA comes around, they're going to want an electronic copy of the records within 24 hours. So essentially, they're saying you're going to have to do this electronically. And some small farms and small food hubs may not have the capacity to do that. And you know, Mary Beth was just talking about how food hubs preserve that almost direct to consumer relationship where farmers and consumers have that relationship. You know where your food is coming from when you work with food hubs, the kind of food hubs we're talking about. And that covers this tracking our food issue. You know, Mary Beth brought up, you buy an egg carton from a food hub, it's going to have the farmer's name on that egg carton. You know, when you're participating in the small local food system, you know where your food is coming from. That's why you are consumers of the small local food system. And so the FDA coming in, adding these new requirements on top of that, where there has to be, you know, electronic records, lot numbers, this very specific information that follows, you know, a head of lettuce from the farm all the way through the food system is going to be really burdensome to both small farms and small establishments like food hubs. And particularly for food hubs, they have to, when they're receiving food from farms, they're going to have to make sure that they have all the information they need from the farm. And then they also have to put their own information, their own stamp on when they received it, what they're doing with it, and when it leaves their facility. So that's a lot of coordination and a lot of trying to make systems that maybe are incompatible work together. So we're really concerned about the import of this rule and really, you know, encourage you to use our template or just go to the FDA site and put your comments in about this. You could, you know, let us know if you need any more help with it. But I know Roland has drafted several emails already. Hopefully you've gotten those action alerts and can refer back to those. INSAC has some great posts that are linked in our emails that can help explain more about the law. But I would say that we know that specifically in regards to the FDA, more comments mean more attention to the issue. So we're not worried about redundancy. We're worried about really letting the FDA know that the small local foods community is concerned about adding these huge regulations to our farms and food hubs.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Chloe. We have a few comments, but I just want to remind folks in the comments, you'll see a link to our blog post on how to comment on the traceability rule. And that it has our short synopsis of the issue, as well as links to the rule, the proposed rule itself, in addition to a much longer commentary on it. And you can always reach out to us if you have further questions. We want to, for the sake of time, I think we want to wrap this up. Chase, you're asking, do you see a compromise? Chloe, is that something you want to address here, or should we follow up in a comment later?
Well, I mean, there are some compromises. I think that, I mean, if you're GAP certified, you already have a lot number system. So there are farms that already are doing this. It's the imposing of making it have to be congruent through the whole food system that's going to be really burdensome. And so we're certainly, you know, we want, if there is a foodborne illness outbreak, we want to be able to know where the food comes from. But we're just pointing out that problem of, in this local food system, we often already know that and don't need, say, UPC codes on farms that then go to food hubs and everybody can scan in the same system. We're just really concerned that these, you know, regulations are going to have an impact on supply. Like food hubs aren't going to want to, farmers aren't going to want to sell to food hubs that require this now. They're all going to, you know, be pushed more to direct to consumers. Small farms would be push to direct-to-consumer sales rather than really expanding the food system on the level that Mary Beth was talking about.
Yeah, and I will make one comment, but I like a lot of these rules that they're intentionally burdensome for small farms because it's large farms that are able to pay for more of the technology, the staff time, and that training to implement these new rules. And so, but it is intentionally burdensome for small farms to slowly try to push them out. And, you know, it's not necessarily so much about food safety as it is about competing with small farms, which is why it's even more important for people to advocate for that. You know, we are all about food safety. We have a whole food safety team. So we're not trying to tell people that we don't want traceability and we don't want food safety standards, but it's just these certain rules that actually don't make people more safe. It just creates more, you know, more burdens for small farms. So thank you so much, Chloe, for that. That was super helpful.
Thank you for that, for you both. Chloe, do you mind, and Mary Beth, sharing your contact information of if folks have further questions for you, how can they get in touch?
Sure. You can email me at chloe@carolinafarmstewards.org. I have a pretty busy day, and since I know I gave you a really quick turnaround, if you do have questions, I will try to get back to you today.
My email is my name, Mary Beth, MaryBeth, at carolinafarmstewards.org. So please reach out if you have any questions about FarmsSHARE or other education-related content.
Beautiful. Thank you both. And thank you for everyone who's tuned in. We've really enjoyed spending this month talking about hunger and food access issues. We will return next week with another chapter and angle to look at that. That's right, Chase. It's definitely really complicated. And just Chloe, I don't know if I mentioned, like, Chloe is on our food safety team, and this is Chloe's world. And so this isn't someone we're just pulling in from the back to randomly speak on this subject. Chloe is an authority in this discussion and can offer, she's offering informed insight here. So please utilize our food safety team. If you're a farmer and you want to know more about this, check out that blog post. Again, that deadline is December. Oh man, I wish. It's February 22nd, which is Monday, to submit comments. And there's a part of it that you can just submit them directly to the FDA. We have a template for you that kind of guides you how to make. We didn't invent the comment process, so I apologize in advance. It's a little tricky, which is why we have the template that we do. But it's there to help you, and also share your comments with your legislators, because it's important that they know how you feel about supporting local food, small farmers, and your local food community. So any action that you take is beneficial here, and we're so grateful for your time, and we hope to see you here back next week. Thanks all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, y'all. Have a good weekend.